Hello and welcome to Orthopedia Live. I'm Chris Douglas, and our guest today is a former Olympian marathoner, screenwriter, poet, journalist, women's advocate, and writer. She's a lady of many awards and the author of the book Nowhere to Run, An American Odyssey. It is my honor to introduce to you Lynn Petronella. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris. This is a terrific format, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
It is my pleasure. You were born in Manhasset, New York. A minute ago, before that, I was starting to go back into the memories, my childhood as well, and you were the same. We were in the same part, actually, of New York's area. I was in Queens, you were in Manhasset, and I remember I used to go to on 25A to Sunken Meadow State Park. You're probably very familiar with that.
Oh yeah, 25A, Northern Boulevard.
25A was beautiful. And if you could take us back into your childhood and speak about the Daddy's First Cadillac. I read on your book. It was fantastic. Hobbies, schools, your parents' lifestyle, and what you remember from then, and what you keep in your heart since then.
What I remember is, we were an Italian, Irish, German, French, very Catholic family, and both sides were extremely Catholic. And in those days, people lived not far from each other. So my father's parents lived within a mile. My mother's parents lived 20 minutes away in Greenwich Village. And there was always a lot of family around, and there was always a lot of activity and action. My mother and father, they got married and they proceeded to have 5 children in 3.5 years. I was the second child, the first girl, and I was born 363 days after my older brother in December. Ironically, both of us were born at the same Christmas party at the same hospital on Fifth Avenue in New York. So Christmas and my birthday always seemed to crash and coincide in good and bad ways. And my mother tells me the story, and every child loves to hear the story of when they were born. My mother tells me the story the night that I was born. They were playing a song called The Little Lady from Shady Lane. And at the time, it was a very popular song. And she said, it sounds like a creepy song, but it was a song that really it's kind of touching in a cute way. It's a song about this girl that comes into town, and the town will never be the same again. And every time she bats her eyelashes, everybody stops. And you get to the end of the song and you find out she's only 9 days old. They're talking about a baby. So my parents would always call me the little lady from Shady Lane, because whenever I showed up, things happened. Things were always happening. I was like the doer, and I was like mommy's helper. And I never thought about it until I got older, because, I became the leader it was sort of fostered on me as the oldest girl, but I took it on as I don't know if it's a badge of courage or just because you identify with your mom. I became the mommy at 1.5. I was, helping out and teaching and very mature. And I said, I never really had a child. I was running around after everybody. But it was always a lot happening, a lot of fun, a lot of parties, a lot of birthdays. Everything we did was, in those days, they were big Christmases, big birthdays, big Easters, big Thanksgivings, a lot of food, and a lot of, yelling and screaming, Italian and Irish, a lot, let's go on, and very Catholic. So we had a lot condensed, and we had New York City 20 minutes from our doorstep, and we were there. My mother was a big New York person. She loved it, took us there continuously to the museums and ice skating and Radio City, which was always a big event at Christmas. So everything was big. It was New York. We did everything big.
Keep in touch with any friends from the era?
What happened was, we moved from Flushing, Main Street, which was Queens, when I was about 6. And that whole part of our life ended. And we moved to Manhasset because we needed a bigger home. And my father wanted to give us an amazing education. And Manhasset was one of the top places to raise a family. And my dad being a doctor, they researched very thoroughly for like a year and a half before they found a brand new home. And we moved in, and that was the beginning of a whole different life, new friends, new everything. And, I took to it with eagerness. And, we had an Italian last name. So, my brothers kind of didn't get as easy of a ride. The kids in the neighborhood in those days could be bullies. So it was a big transition. And there was a lot of adjustments that, went on for us as a family. And I don't know, I liked it. I had a lot of friends. We had a big neighborhood. Everybody had big Catholic families. And those were the days when you could play outside and ride your bike, and you knew the neighborhood. And we walked to school and came home for lunch, and the Good Humor truck, the ice cream truck, came to our front
Oh,
yard.
yeah.
It was
Remember
Santa Claus came right outside our door almost at Christmas. We had a huge Christmas tree that was in the middle of the road, which turned out to be the street I lived on was called Abbey Road. And when the Beatles did their first album, Abbey Road, everybody came and took all our signs as souvenirs, so nobody could find my house. So that was interesting. But Santa Claus would come underneath this ginormous tree. It was like quasi magical because we didn't know anything else. I mean, and then, when it snowed, we lived on top of a hill, and we would go down the hill in our sled. And when there were snow days, we would stay home for a week from the snow and build forts. And we did all kid things. We had a very amazing childhood. And our parents were both educated. My mother was a nurse. My father was a doctor. And they wanted us to have a better life than they had had. So we had every lesson. We had ballet. We had piano. We had horseback riding. We had swimming. We had tennis. We were so busy, Chris. Like by the end of the day, everybody was out. And that's the way my parents wanted it. Nobody could get into any trouble. Keep them busy. That was the way it was.
I do remember. We were very active.
Yeah.
Your book, Nowhere to Run, American Odyssey, it is, as I mentioned before, your memoir, but it reads like a novel. And it takes everybody back in time. There's so many memories. There's so many adventures in there. There's so many things that people should know about. I advise them buy this book immediately. But is your childhood the way it was pictured and portrayed?
You know what it is?
Is that what triggered your appetite to write the book?
I think what happened was as I grew up and I went out into the world, my thinking was, when I get married, I will have my family and we'll do what I did when I was growing up. That's what I always, because I would have wanted my children to have those benefits because I felt I had a lot of benefits. What happened was, I think my growing up got caught in the crosshairs of the women's movement, the civil rights movement. And we were very sheltered from all this. We just knew we had two parents. They were home every day. Mom was at home. My father went to work. He paid the bills. There was kerfuffles and arguments like in everybody's family, but it was a very traditional life. And, I was very fortunate because I had an incredible education. And because of that, I expected myself to go to college. And, everybody I grew up with was going to go. So, I had very good grades. I was a cheerleader. I was a president of this and this, and I was into everything. And I was fortunate enough to get early acceptance to Northwestern. And it was a big relief because I could have gone to a school on the East Coast like Smith or Vassar, and I didn't want to go to an all-girls school, and I didn't want to do what everybody else did. Everybody wanted me to be over here. I'm kind of like, I want to be over there. Okay. And in those days, you could fly back and forth to Chicago like it was around the corner, $50. So it wasn't like, even if you were going 1,000 miles away or whatever it was very easy to come home. You could get on a plane. It wasn't crowded. You know, in those days when people flew, people were, you know, weren't doing what they're doing today. So I had a friend who'd gone there, and I got in early acceptance, and they called Northwestern the Harvard. I thought, okay, I'm in school. I'm going to go there. Great. So, you know, I had a very sheltered life when it came to work. The only thing I'd ever done was babysit, and because my parents wanted me to focus on my school, and I did, and I got good grades, and so I got in. So the summer before, my mother decides, okay, now you're going to go to work. Okay. So her idea of work, God love her, because, you know, everybody assumed I would be a mother. So this gets into as how you're programmed as a woman. I'm going to get married. I'm going to be a mother. And then my husband will take care. So that's in the back of your mind. I wasn't thinking about that at 18. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. So I get this job. My mother picked it out. You're going to be a mother's helper in Westchester for this lady. And guess what? Her husband went to Northwestern. How perfect. Okay. So I get this job with this lovely woman at Westchester. She has a little baby. He's adorable. And then she has a 6 and a 7-year-old. She's out golfing all the time. The husband's on the train. Everybody seemed a little bit unhappy in some way. And I was in love with this baby, and the 2 older ones were fighting constantly. So I had a huge amount of responsibility, and the pay was like really slave labor, but I didn't know anything about money, about pay, about nothing. I just did the job. I got paid. And basically what happens, which I found out, if you're somebody's nanny, they pretty much own you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, I had like, you know, that's basically the job. And by the end of that summer, I said, I don't know if I ever want to have kids. I'm so tired. And I was only 18. I mean, this is a lot. The 2 kids were fighting. The baby needed to be changed about 6 times a day. I was running him to and from the pool. I was cleaning the house, and the mother would breeze in from the golf course like, you know, nothing was happening. I said, I don't know. So at the end of that summer, I'm getting ready to go to college. I come home. I had just gotten my driver's license, never driven at night. I go, let me take my mother's car out. Okay. I'm coming around a road, and I didn't really drink. I mean, if I had a cocktail or, you know, I wasn't one of those, I would go to a party, but I wasn't like a crazy person. So I was coming around this curve on a country road. It was dark. Some guy comes toward me with his bright lights. I do not see anything, and I crash with my mother's car into a telephone pole, and I didn't have a seatbelt on. I smash into the window. I crash my chin, and I see the steam coming off this car. And all I could think of was, this car is going to blow up with me in it. And, you know, my life is going to be over. So I jump out of the car, and this was so unbelievable. As I jump out of the car, this car pulls over, and 2 of my friends go, Lynn. And they look at me and they go, do you want us to take you home? And I jump in their car, and we flee the scene of this accident. Now there's a car impaled on a telephone pole. I'm in their car, and I'm thinking, my mother is going to kill me. I destroyed her car. And all of a sudden I put my hand underneath my chin, and my chin is in my hand. And I said, I think you better take me to the hospital because I think I'm going to need stitches. So they drive me to the emergency room. Now, of course, it's a Friday night. My parents are out. No one's around. When you're born in December, like you and I are, we're the youngest in the class. So I was not yet old enough to be taken care of by a doctor I needed my parents' permission. So I'm in the hospital. I have no idea. This is before cell phones. I don't know where they are. They don't know where, nobody knows where anybody is. I'm sitting there with my chin and they wouldn't let me look at it. I said, can I see what, oh, no, we don't want you to look at it. I go, I just want to see what it looks like. No. Okay. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, my mother's going to have us because she's your mother. She's going to worry. So I said, whatever you do when you call my parents, please don't tell my mother, tell my father. Because my mother. So what do? They tell my mother she's fainting. My father, who was a doctor, he knew the plastic surgeons at the hospital. They finally got them and they came over. And then, of course, everyone's coming in the room. I go, don't look. My mother's like, oh my God, it's on her face. Mothers, it's her face. I don't know if I could take it. I'm like, please get her out of here. So they get this plastic surgeon. And, by now it's a couple of hours. It didn't hurt. And now it's like, my chin is gashed all the way through. And they stick a needle that is the size of like I don't know. It was long. And I grabbed my dad's hand. I was in so much pain. And I put this in the book because knowing he was there by my side, it left such an imprint on me about people who go through pain and they're by themselves. I just felt like a sense of like, oh, I'm okay. They shot me up 4 places, numbed it, sewed it up. I looked like, whatever. But I came home and I was supposed to, ironically, go to Northwestern the next day. My ticket, everything was packed. I was ready to go. Well, I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to be in bed with my chin that was stitched up in about 50 places. And then there was a nail that had gone into my knee. A bunch of stuff happened, but it was just more of a shock. And that was going to change a lot of things. It was also going to show me different things about my character and strength, which I didn't know at the time, like who I was to get up from what the doctor told me. Okay, so the doctor said, you're not going to bend your knee. You're never going to have, feeling in your chin. I mean, they were so negative. I'm like, you know what? What did I do? Okay, so I had to be home for 10 days. Of course, the car was totaled. I had teeth. There were teeth all over the floor of the thing. It got all, listen, I had a good doctor. He stitched it up. But then he said, now you can't talk with these stitches. I'm going to college. You're not allowed to speak. I'm like, how am I going to go? I don't even know where I'm going. Well, don't speak. You're going to stretch the stitches. So I get on the plane about 8 days. They had to take out the first set. I get on the plane. I'm on painkillers. I got the thing here. My mother looks at me like, oh my God, we're sending her off. Now I'm late for my first time at school and I'm 1,500 miles away from anybody I know.
Could you eat or just liquids?
I could eat, but I wasn't supposed to move it. I wasn't supposed to chew. I wasn't supposed to talk. I wasn't supposed to smile. It was cut all the way through. So they had to stitch it several layers. And it was the muscle, it was the nerve. It was like all of this. So the more I moved it, the more it would not heal because they didn't want it to look like a massive scar because it was on my face. Okay, so everybody's thinking about aesthetics and I'm thinking about how am I not going to talk? I'm going to school. And everybody asked me, what happened to you? What happened to you? And I met more people who wanted to know. And then I'm not supposed to talk. I'm supposed to have signs up saying, this is what happened. Well, it turned out to be almost like a talking. I met a lot of people. And of course I was limping because my knee, I couldn't bend it and this and that. So I was a little bit not hysterical, but I was lonely. I felt a little depressed. I was on medication. But, I was trying to enjoy the meeting.
How long did it take before it healed?
I don't even remember because I lived my life and it really didn't heal right because I lived and I had to talk and I had to get places and I had to live life. And the first thing I did was go out and buy a bicycle. Forget not bending my knee. I was bending my knee. I was riding a bicycle and I was doing everything I wasn't supposed to be doing. Okay. So that's a whole nother, I was talking and bending my knee. Okay. That's what happened. And I got into like meeting people, and Northwestern is a very interesting place because it's on a lake. And I didn't know anything about, sororities and fraternities. And they have what's called, sorority rush. And you get to go around and meet all these girls, and you decide if you want. And I was living in this very barren one room, dormitory. And it was boring. I'm like, where's the action? What's going on? And these girls look like fun. The thing I quickly found out is everybody at Northwestern was a lot like me because we had to have the same qualifications. So I was meeting friends and making friends, and of course they were having parties, and I would go and I met people, and everybody, was this, that, and the other thing. But it was just like I wasn't gonna let it deter me. And what ended up happening out of it was, because I'd been a cheerleader in high school, it was kind of boring college. I was like, I got to read all these books, and you got to go in these classes. There's 300 people. I'm over here. It's like, I could have stayed home and read the books. But so I went with the program. I did what they did. I went through Rush. I got accepted by the top sorority. The girls, we just clicked. So at the end of the first year, they had tryouts for cheerleading. And by that time, my knee was bending. I was riding my bike. I felt pretty good. And so I started to learn some of the things, like you had to do a split, you had to do this, and I was able to do it. Like, okay, I'm going to try out for cheerleading. They had one spot, and I got the spot. So I was over the moon. And in this spot, you had to do flips off people and jump on a trampoline and this and that. And I was the tiniest at the time. I didn't realize it, but I was the smallest one on the team. So that meant you were the one that went to the top of the pyramid, and then they drop you and catch you. This was my thing. I was very fearless with the knee and the wrist and the thing. So by the time I got home that summer, the doctor said, you've been talking too much. We're going to have to open it up and sew it up again because it didn't heal right. And when I left New York, they had taken out one set of stitches, but evidently there were so many sets of stitches. None of this was really explained properly to me. They were like stitches that were melting and stitches that you took out and whatever. He said, we're going to have to redo it. Okay. So I had to go in, they had to cut it open, they had to re-stitch it up. And then, whatever happened after that, I guess that's kind of like a blur. But then, I just went back to school. And then, right after that is when my quote friend from high school decided that I needed a boyfriend. And that's when I met my future husband. So all of these things were converging on me. I wasn't in, I was just like a kid growing up. And that summer was my very first time having a job. I was hired as a waitress at a very fancy country club. And so, I'm being stitched up, I'm working at a restaurant, and then this man shows up, and, everything just became a cloud of smoke.
How old were you at the time?
I was barely 19 or maybe 18 and a half. And, I just became a cheerleader. I was very tired. I just finished my exams. I came home for the summer. It was a big year for me. And a lot had happened. I mean, you're growing up, and I was looking forward to seeing my family and being home. And it's so funny to me how people always want to think you need a boyfriend, have to fix you up. It's like I never had a problem having a boyfriend. That was the thing that was so I was always busy doing a lot of other things, and a boyfriend, if it worked out, okay, but I wasn't looking to marry anybody. I was a baby still, but this friend of mine evidently thought this guy was going to be like my guy. So he brings him to my house, and the antics ensued, and it changed my life in a lot of ways, which, because as a young girl, you're thought to believe when you fall in love, you give up this and that and this and that. And there was a lot of things that happened to me in the midst of all these other things of me growing up that were kind of compounded by the fact that now I'm falling in love, or this person was really falling in love, whatever falling in love is, because it happened quickly. And, there were gifts and plane trips. And I was like, okay, this must be going to be my life. Okay, I'll go with this guy. Private helicopter to the World Series. I'm like, come on, Chris, you're not going to say no. So, it was pretty great. And then we went into and we learned then you learn about real life, and you go, this was not what I signed up for. Where are we? But that's a whole nother part of the book. But, you go into your memory of what really is love. And then, of course, your parents want to protect you, and your parents want you to be happy. And then in the midst of all of this happening, what happens? I go back to Northwestern to cheer. My parents were supposed to come see me at Northwestern, and I was so excited and so proud because I wanted them to see me, because obviously they were paying my education, and I was like their star kid. And the day before, my mother is crushed between two cars in our driveway and almost loses her leg. Oh, yeah. And when I got that call, ironically, the guy that was in love with me happened to have flown in to see me. And I was in shock because it was so many emotions. I was still a baby. I loved my mother. It was heartbreaking to hear. And I felt very helpless, and it was nice that he was there. He was comforting, he was sweet and everything. And, I went about my life, but I wasn't going to, drop out of school to come back to New York. I was going to stay in school, and it was very difficult to figure out like exactly what was happening to my mom, and that was the beginning of a very turning point in what was I supposed to do as her daughter. Here I was so far away, carry on with my life, go home and help my mom. There was a lot of conflicting human feelings and emotions. And
was she disabled after that?
Well, what happened was the leg got permanently crushed. So her knee was permanently jammed, and they couldn't figure a way out to, at least they didn't have to amputate her leg, but she was very sick for quite a while in the hospital, lost a lot of blood. They had to do an emergency, hysterectomy. She was at the age in her life where what was so sad is she had just raised all of us. She was at an age now where maybe she could we were all going to go to college, have a minute. And that's when this happened. And, it was hard on my dad because he was 12 years older and he was very used to her. My mother never took a nap. This woman was like a robot. She was so amazing. I don't think she ever slept. And to see that happen put me, and then you start thinking, well, I'm next up. I'm the oldest daughter. I've got to be brave. I've got to be strong. That instinct or whatever it is that you have, I don't know what it is, but it starts like, I can't let her see me weak. I can't, crumble. And you do it, I think, unknowingly. You take on a persona because you want to be strong for your mom because she's really suffering, and the whole family really changed, and it was hard on everybody. So that said, I came home in the middle of this, this person who's madly in love with me tells me, well, I want to marry you. I want you to move to California. Okay. Here I am at Northwestern. I'm, getting straight A's. I'm a cheerleader. My parents are extremely proud of me. And there's this person who I just met, I never had anybody do these things or say these things. So, I'm thinking, okay, this is maybe going to be, I don't know. So and he was introduced to me by a friend in high school. So I thought, well, maybe, okay. So I come home and my mother is just, she's a mess. And she does not want me to, leave Northwestern. And I said, okay, I won't leave. I'm gonna, I don't even know if I want to see this person. I don't really feel like I'm ready, for whatever. So I come back and, I'm feeling distant. And of course he wasn't going to give up on this. So it was kind of a tug of war between him and my mother. It was an awkward experience because, I was so confused about who I was supposed to love, who I was supposed to be with, where I was supposed to go. I mean, really, it was a lot. And so eventually he decides, I told him, I said, I really can't see you anywhere. Well, then he's crushed. My mother's in the hospital. I'm at college. I'm like, you know what? I just want to be left alone because I just can't handle it. And all of my roommates were in love with this guy. He was good looking. He had money. Everyone was in love with him. Everybody was in love. Okay. I said, listen, this is a lot. I need a minute. I get a phone call. I'm downstairs. What do you mean you're downstairs? I just flew in from Los Angeles. I'm downstairs. And all of my roommates, oh, he's here. Girls, he's here. He's here. I go, you know what? You can go down and date him. I'm not up for this now. Oh my God. So I'm slowly putting on my clothes. Like, oh, what am I going to say to this person? He was just forlorn, lovesick when you fall in love. And so I come downstairs and there is this guy. He looks like he hasn't slept in a week with a tan and a down jacket because it's freezing in Chicago, right? He just comes from the beach. He's got the jacket. And I'm looking at this person and I feel guilty, right? I have a ring for you. I had it made at Harvey Weinstein or Weinstein, the big jeweler. And I said, listen, I cannot take a ring from anybody. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't. Your parents turned you against me. You need to get in a cab right now. Listen to this one. You're going to get in a cab right now and you're going to take me to the airport. And I'm sitting there like, okay, like I didn't know what to do. So we get in the cab, we go to the airport. And this was like a scene out of a movie. As he's getting on the plane, he yells, the whole place could hear it. He goes, you're going to wear this ring one day. And he screams it out and he gets on the airplane and everybody in the airport is looking at me and I am so mortified. So then I come back to Northwestern. Now I was a cheerleader, so all the football players were my friends. They were like my brothers. I go, I don't know what I'm going to do with this guy. I don't know. They all thought he was crazy. And anybody from California was considered crazy. So let's not get into it. All the people at Northwestern were Midwestern, corn growing, people from regular families. I was from New York, so I was a little bit, different, but California was like, the guy's crazy. Okay. So I'm like, listen, I hope he doesn't come back because I don't think I can take this. So here's my mother who 2 months earlier said, I never want you to see this person ever. Okay. I am cheerleading. I'm with my friends. Everything's fine. I get a phone call from my parents in New York. This is my mother. Very dramatic. She missed her calling. I think she should have been an actress. She says to me, Lynn, he really loves you. I said, I can't listen to this. No, he was here for 4 hours. He was crying. He loves you so. I said, you know something? I think you're all crazy and I'm not listening to this. And I hung up on her. I hung up. So I went back to, acted like none of this happened. I started dating another guy. The guy I was dating, I said, you know what? I have a very funny feeling about this guy. I think he is going to show up here. I just have this premonition that he's coming. And I was like, Rob, I hope he doesn't show up.
And it did.
In the middle of a blizzard, okay? In the middle of a blizzard with his camper van. You know, today we would call this person a stalking, you know, Charles Manson. I mean, he's a nice guy. Let's not get anything wrong with it. He shows up in his van. I'm at the cheering game with my boyfriend and I'm cheering and we're going to go out. And all of a sudden this guy says, Lynn, and I look over and there's this guy. He looked like he just came off the beach. Everybody else is bundled up. It's 50 below zero outside. Don't do it. And then I'm like, what am I going to do with this person? Okay. So I said, Rob, he had no place to live. He was living in his camper. It's 50 below zero. Now what? I'm responsible for this person because I felt responsible now. So I said, what are you going to do? Oh, you know, I don't know. I want to be okay. Oh my God. I want to get into Northwestern. I'm like, okay, well, where are you going to live? I find him a place to live. He lives with these guys in an off-campus house. He then proceeds to invite all of his fraternity brothers. He was a fraternity brother with Ron Howard. Listen, my ex was like a child, you know, star and stuff like that. So he brings in his recruits. He tries to get into Northwestern. And when they ask him the question, why do you want to be here? He said, because my girlfriend goes to school here. Wrong answer. They don't take him. And then the waterworks. Now he's out of school, out of a job, living in a freezing cold place. And I feel like I'm responsible and I didn't even want him to come. So he goes, let's go to Florida on a vacation. I'm like, okay. Let's take a vacation. Okay, because it's freezing. Okay, we'll take. In the meantime, my mother's going in and out of consciousness in a hospital. You know, she doesn't know what's going on. So I go on this vacation. He's upset. He's calling his father. He didn't get into school. You know, I don't know what to do. And his parents are going through a divorce as we're going through this. So there's a lot of other things going on in both of our backgrounds. His parents are divorcing. My mother's almost dying in a hospital. Okay, here we sit. And so I'm feeling horrible because, you know, now he feels like a complete failure, not just as a person, but as a guy. You know, for men, it's not a good look. You know what I mean? And he was, you know, he's a capable person. He wasn't an incapable person. So I'm like, okay. So we get back from the trip, which was a complete disaster. And he says to me, well, I'm going to move to Colorado at the end of the year. If you want to come with me, let's get engaged. We'll get married next year. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, seriously? I don't think I want to do that. So by the time he built it up and convinced me and made it sound like this was going to be this amazing thing, and I thought about everything the guy had gone through to be with me, I thought, well, nobody's going to go through this, right? Would you know anybody that would go to that length? I mean, because you read all these stories. He went through high water and hill and
That's what love does, yeah?
right. So I said to myself, I'm going to give him a chance, you know? Well, that's when the real fun began. because this is what cracked me up about my family. Even though my mother encouraged it, and I tell her this all the time, the minute I actually said I was going to do it, I was excommunicated from my family. That was it. No
He
money.
was not the right one for her.
Well, she wanted him. She's calling to tell me he's the right one. And I'm telling her I don't want to deal with him. Okay. So here's these two polar opposites. In his mind, because she liked him and he got the approval from my mother, he was going to dig in. So even if I said no, he got my parents' approval. See, this is the way he's thinking. My life was okay. I didn't need this. Okay. Now here comes Mama Bear at 9. Now I'm barely 19 and I'm going to mother this guy who I barely know. And I'm going to go on this adventure. But because I'm so fair, I'm going, well, we'll split everything. I had no money. I had nothing. We'll split everything. You know, he had stocks and money and no, we'll split it. Okay. So, you know, by this time, his mother was not wild about me because I took her, I was looked down upon like I took her son off on this tangent. In the meantime, she's getting divorced from the father. So a lot of what's going on in the background, I think, was a result of his parents divorcing. This is how I look at it. And he was looking for somebody who was nice, which I was. And he was looking for love, like all of us, you know, but I showed up at that crossroad for him. He had already had lots of other experiences. I was green. I'd had like 2 boyfriends. I didn't know. So off we go. And I look back on this and what was kind of sad is all of people they didn't want me to go. All my friends were like, don't leave. Please. They were crying. Please don't go. I mean, I had so many friends, men and women. They didn't want me to leave. It was a big decision. And, a friend of mine said to me, the guy who was my, right after I left, the guy who was my cheering partner, we all had partners, girl and boy partners, my male partner. He that summer after I left, it kind of broke my heart. He died in a car accident. And I think deep down inside, he knew I was making a terrible decision, but nobody was going to stop this. Wasn't going to be stopped because it was like once, and that I'm the kind of person when I make a decision, I do it. Like once my head's in it, I do it.
Even if you realize that you're wrong.
I didn't know it at the time. I was giving him a chance. I was weighing it out. But once I made the decision to be with him, I was going to be with him. And what we went through, Chris, we went through so much together for it to break up, which was even more sad because we overcame a lot of things as a couple. But as I'm sure you know, because you're married, oftentimes outside influences, when they seep into a marriage, I didn't have a backup plan. My mother was in New York. I had no friends. I'm in the middle of Boulder, Colorado. I knew nobody. And not only that, it was such a different environment for me. And I really clung on to him. He was like all I had. That was it. And he didn't want, nobody wants to be, so he made me be very strong and he'd take off and he'd go to LA or he'd do this.
His family was in LA actually, or
his family was from LA. They're from Encino.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he had a lot of friends at USC. So he left USC to come to be with me at Northwestern. And when it didn't work out, he's like, well, let's go to Colorado. Okay, I guess it's in between. I don't know what he was thinking, but he liked Colorado. Okay. And I said, if I go, I want to finish my education. I'm not going to go there and just be like a ski bum. So I was the one that pushed it that we would apply and we both got in. And then I was fortunate enough, I had a little bit of savings, but I had to nickel and dime my way through college. I worked as a waitress. I did all of these real scarcity things after we had this, high, celebrity lifestyle. Now, I didn't have to go that far, but there could have been somewhere of an in between. But there was a lot of people pressuring him from his family. And it was a very odd dynamic. Oh, she's going to take all your money and you better. I didn't know all these things were going on behind. Oh, she's Catholic. She's going to have all these kids. I was such a nervous wreck. I didn't even want to do anything. I was killing myself. I was riding my bike. I was working as a waitress. I was on food stamps. I was still getting straight A's in school. I just had like this focus. And I said, after being married to my husband, training for the Olympics was like a breeze. I was just go, because I just went with it, believing we were going to have, and it kept, the backpedaling. I'm not sure, and every time I would try to leave, it would block the door. I fell into all of those female things. And I said to I will never live with somebody. Like, if you want me, you marry me. If you don't, like, I don't need this aggravate. It was a lot, and we both got through college. I bought us a home. We had a wedding in New York, which he barely showed up for. He hated my mother. My mother hated, it was a lot of hate. My mother hated him. Nobody in his family came. I mean, it was like the worst day of my life. And then after that, we were supposed to go to Europe together when I got out of college, and he decided he didn't want to go. And I went by myself to see my sister and my brother. And, by the time I came home to the house, it was overrun with volleyball players and I'm sure a few women. And I said, I'm not going to do this. And then I really took up running seriously because I was, number one, because my mother was almost incapacitated. Number two, because I was in a lot of emotional distress. And I moved, I had a good job, and I had a roommate, a lady who worked at where I worked, who had a place there, and I stayed with her until I got my own place. And I put so much effort into my life, and I was shocked at what I was capable of. I took the blinders off of what I was told I should do, what I was told I could do. I was being continuously insulted by my husband and his family. I was continuously being underpaid where I worked. I was so miserable. And when I was running, I felt this incredible sense of freedom, and never really thought, I was athletic, but I never thought, well, let me go train for the Olympics. That wasn't like on my list of things that I thought I would even remotely consider doing. But getting back to having three brothers, we were all super competitive, but my older brother had been a distance runner, Richard, who became a doctor. And we used to watch him go running in all kinds of weather and think, this guy's a crazy person. And I ended up living in Boulder, Colorado, which was the home of Frank Shorter, the Olympic gold medalist. And there was a lot of, history. And a friend of mine had a house in Aspen and said, why don't you come up for the weekend? And I went for the weekend, and I was jogging, and they said, there's a woman's race. Why don't you run in it? And I'm like, I don't run races. I'm like just a jogger. And they go, run in the race. And I signed up. It was called the Bonnie Bell 10K, which is 6.2 miles. It was, now Aspen, Denver's a mile up. Aspen's another couple thousand feet up. And they couldn't find my race number. And I held up the whole race. I was so embarrassed because I didn't even want to do it. They find my number. I grab it, I put it on, and I'm in the front of all these people. And Newsweek takes my picture. There I am, smiling, and Newsweek says, women, the joy of running. There you are. So I end up running in this race, and I'm like, oh my God, look at all these people. They're passing me. I'm going to die. And then about halfway into the race, I start passing everybody. Halfway into it, I'm like, you know what? I feel pretty good. This is okay. All right, here I go. And then this little brunette woman pulls up next to me, like in, like Wile E. Coyote and the thing in that cartoon, the Roadrunner. She pulls up. Hi, I'm Louise Shorter. And this is Frank Shorter's wife. Of course she runs. She's married to the gold medalist, right? So and all of a sudden she's here 1 minute, and the next minute up the side of this hill like a gazelle. And I'm like, my God, look at this girl. She's unbelievable, beautiful, like poetry in motion, right? And I'm like, okay, let me get up this hill. And I end up in the race 10th in a time which was 7 minutes a mile, which I thought, that's pretty good. I thought, oh, that's not so bad. Okay, I did okay. And I survived and I lived and it was okay. And I didn't really think anything about it. And when
What year was this?
1977. And I come back to, because I had a job in Denver, and I was taking the bus back and forth. It was a 40-mile trip each way. I didn't have a car. And
so you're three years away from the Olympics.
Well, and this is what happened. Everything happened so fast. It was like on steroids what happened, because I go back to my office. Someone sends me the magazine. They said, this person looks very familiar. I open it up. I go, my God, that's me. And then a friend of mine who was a runner said, they're looking for a spokesmodel for Pepsi for a running program. You'd be perfect. I go with my magazine. I hunt the guy down. I knew who he was, but I didn't want to, I wanted to get to know, I wanted to do the right presentation. I knew who he was. I wanted the job so badly, but I didn't want to be, I wanted to be like professional. He meets me. He gets on the phone. He goes, we found our girl. I'm sending you to New York tomorrow. Pack your bags. Okay. So he's working with Frank Shorter. It turned out him and Frank Shorter were doing a clothing line together. So now I'm not only running, I'm working with Frank Shorter.
Who is Frank Shorter?
He was the one who won the Olympic gold medal in the marathon in 1972. He's an American.
There you go.
So in other words, and I know that because of my brother. See, my brother, all this sports history, when you grow up with it, you absorb it. It wasn't anything remotely on my radar until I got into running. And then I found out I'm in Boulder and this is where this man lives. And he had created this running boom in America in Munich in 1972. So I fly to New York, I get the job, and I start training for the Boston Marathon. And I had the help of amazing people. And I was able to connect. Is this off?
No, I'm just showing
oh, okay.
Frank Shorter's image.
Oh, yeah. That's Frank Shorter. There he is.
Yeah.
And, what he did in Munich set off a big running boom for men. So in my mind, I thought, well, I didn't think it. I thought, listen, my brother had run the Boston Marathon. Now he was in Europe in medical school. And because I had so much time on my hand and I was very determined to handle pain on my own, emotional and physical pain, I was thinking about all the physical pain my mother had been in with her car accident. You got to remember, all these things psychologically affect you in a way that you don't even realize. So her pain of almost losing her leg. And I thought, I don't want to lose my legs. I'm a very athletic person. The emotional pain of my divorce. I thought, okay, let me take this body and see what I can do with it. I'm young. I got the time. I'm in the right spot. And let me do it. And I just did it. I did it as the best I could. It was such an amazing journey to watch me evolve as a person, as an athlete, and like a woman. It changed my whole perception of who I was as a human being, as a woman, what I was, because I'd lost a lot of confidence. Nobody wants to be divorced and have somebody run off with your husband. I mean, it was kind of like the Lady Diana thing. So, it was so, to block out that, I thought, okay, it's such a pure experience and it's such a high. And then I had all these other people who were so like in my corner. It just lifted my spirits, And then when Pepsi gave me this job, I was the first amateur athlete ever hired by them. I was female. They could have hired a guy. And they gave me this position to put on the largest 10,000 meter running program in the world. And at the time, they had no idea how many races there were going to be. You know, we started with a couple. The thing, I mean, I was so good at promoting it because I liked running. We had like 300. I was like on 2 and 3 planes a day flying. I mean, that could have been a presidential kid going to all these places in America. And I got this incredible ride that was like, you know, to this day, it was such an amazing experience. But at the same time, I was trying to train for the Boston Marathon because I had already run a marathon one to qualify in California. And once you're qualified and you get into the Boston Marathon, of course, you want to be able to do better. And I was with people where I could train and try to be better. And that's what I was doing. And I was very dedicated. You really had to change your whole mindset, your body, be in really good shape. You learn a lot about, you know, recovery, your heart rate. It's a very internal, it's a form of meditation that's not just sitting. It's athletic meditation. I don't know how to describe it. It's you really go into the seat of your body in a very unusual way. And I thought while I was doing this, it was, of course, it's painful, and being female, you have to go through a lot. Hence, I pushed myself through because you see, you know, all these gymnasts. I mean, you go through what you go through. I mean, you lose your cycle. All of your blood from there goes into your muscles. So your body is in a state of stress, I would say, similar to, I liken it to being pregnant, because when you're pregnant, the blood all goes into the child. So in my head, the blood was all going into the creation of an Olympic athlete. That's how I saw it. Every ounce of my oxygen, my blood was going into this creature that I was creating. And you kind of get into this thing because you marvel at what your body is capable of. I think that was the eye-opening thing. And not just me, everybody has that capacity. Most people are not going to do this. But I had the unique opportunity, and it was interesting. And I felt like I wasn't just running for me. I felt like I was running for my mother, for my grandmother, and for all the other women that nobody took seriously, nobody paid attention to. I said, you know what, you guys, you're athletic, but we are great athletes. We give birth. I go, my God, I got to be in the delivery room for 30 hours. Let me run and, you know, win a gold medal. Then I can retire and have my babies. So that's kind of the thought process, but it happened quickly.
How'd you give the name of your book, Nowhere to Run? Why this name?
I gave it that name because at the time we had nowhere, N-O. And I was
a great title, Nowhere to Run, an American Odyssey.
I was very frustrated with the politics of sports, the politics of our government. I was raised to think I was equal. I found out I wasn't equal in my marriage. I found out I wasn't equal in my job. The only place I felt equal was when I ran. Because when I ran, it didn't matter. If my time was your time, we were equal. It was so liberating and so exhilarating, and I hung on to this for dear life. So when I trained for the Boston Marathon and my time was 2:57, I went straight to the history books and I looked up all the Olympic winning times of marathon runners. And when I saw that in the last 100 years, if I had participated in the marathon as a man, I would have won a gold medal. The light went off in my head and I said, that's what I'm going to do.